Good morning, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Starhearth Astrology, and I'm here to talk about your first quarter mooncast, which goes over the astrology of the next week. While we have the moon from its new moon phase, which is happening right now, as I'm recording this at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time, which is the new moon, until we enter the fourth quarter. Which will happen Monday night, yeah, first thing, Monday morning, a week from today. I'm gonna try and make these shorter because I feel like they've been getting longer, so yeah, I'm gonna breeze through some stuff and let's jump right in. Okay, so here's our first quarter mooncast. This is the new moon. Yeah, I got a little bit jolted out because I started recording this and someone knocked at the door and interrupted. And whew. Okay, so we're starting over. Here we are. Hello, Monday morning. Okay, here's a recap from last week. We had Mercury station direct. So Mercury station direct a week ago, which is the end of Mercury retrograde. So we've been working through kind of the final piece of Mercury retrograde for the last week and then for all of this week, and then Mercury will clear its shadow at the end of this week, which means we are on to new territory. So we have Mercury retrogrades, Mercury moves forward over a chunk of signs, stations retrograde, it retrogrades back over a chunk of degrees, not signs, stations direct, and then it moves forward again. So it crosses these degrees 3 times. So the first time, kind of get the prelude, get the retrograde to deal with it, and then we get the end to integrate the information. And then by the time it clears that degree, we are on to new territory. So that is something kind of exciting that happens at the end of this week, is that we get to kind of get out of the Cancerian energy of reflection, which is even more emphasized in Cancer. So Mercury retrograde is going to have us going over stuff with Cancer. Cancer loves the past, memory, nostalgia, kind of the emotional tones of the memory. And so, we get to kind of start moving forward. Mercury's still going to be in Cancer until the beginning of August. So we're still kind of in that more nostalgic phase, but we're dealing with new material starting at the end of this week. So use this time to integrate that stuff so that you're not bringing it forward unless you want to. I'm sure Cancers have lots of photo albums. Okay, then the moon entered the last quarter phase. So at the same time, that was kind of where we were. Winding things down, the energy of the lunar month winding down, kind of getting tired. Then we had some powerful Sun oppositions opposite to Jupiter, Pluto, and then the third one actually comes today with the Sun opposite Saturn, which we'll get into. I think what we saw here was the overreach of power and Capricorn getting a little bit overexcited. So we had the Sun, the leadership, really grabbing for some dark power of breaks with the CDC, the tension with the WHO, rerouting highways of information, getting hospitals to send information to the Trump administration instead of to the CDC, which means we're losing information and they're manipulating the story. We also saw federal agents in Portland. And so the federal government really overstepping and going against states' wishes in reaction to the protesters. So we're seeing these kind of powerful Capricornian shadow swells of pushing the boundary on power. And I imagine we'll see a little bit more of that, but that was some of the darkness, at least that I associated it with. If you think anything else should be included, or if I missed something, or if I got something wrong, feel free to add it to the comments. because that happens. Okay, so when we're looking at the first quarter of the lunar cycle, yeah, what does that mean? So what kind of phases are we in? So we get a new moon today, and new moons kind of rechristen and renew, but kind of in unconscious ways. So we are filled with inspiration. We're back into the waxing energy. And so we've got more creative energy, more outward stuff, but we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So we're still in the dark hemicycle, we're pretty internal, and we're pretty self-referenced. So this is really about like bringing this vision that is purely kind of from you or from God, but you know, it's not really in conversation with the world around you. And so it can be really off base. There's a fumbling quality to the new moon because you're just kind of like learning to walk. Filled with inspiration, filled with kind of this self-assurance, focused because we've got the moon and the sun in the same sign, kind of on the same team, working together. But, you know, they fumble because they don't know how the world works, right? There's no kind of, they can't counterbalance each other. There's no tension between them. It's a very fine point, but hard to balance. But there's magic in it. So yeah, what was it, Goethe? Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius and magic in it, which that quotation is ascribed to him, but actually I think there's some controversy about it. No one has found the source text of where he actually said that. So anyway, just a little fact checking in there. So we've got that one until Thursday, and then we have the waxing crescent moon, which is a little bit more mature than the new moon, but still has this kind of adolescent, very passionate, very inspired energy, still doesn't quite have its sea legs. So this is the last lunar phase before we hit the crisis of the first quarter, where we make choices about what's actually going to come into being and what, hey, maybe it's not time for, we don't have the energy for, is going to be too much to fight for. This is like, okay, we're getting a little bit more light. We can see the moon again. Things are taking shape in their physical form a little bit more in our lives. But we are still kind of just brash and brazen with the energy of the new moon. Okay. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We're going to have energy picking up, and not just energy picking up from the moon, but also the sun is switching into a fire sign. So we've got a little bit more of a dynamic going there. The moon's also going to move through fire, some fire and air signs, and really engage that Mars and Aries in different ways. So we've got more fire and less of this Cancerian, the past, the grief, the tenderness, the hominess. This is a little bit more like, let's build a bonfire with our hearts. Yeah. You know that there's a James Blunt song. James Blunt? Was that his name? I don't know. It's called Bonfire Heart. It's kind of cheesy, but you know, Leo kind of does a little bit of that cheesiness, and so maybe that's the song for this week. Maybe I'll add that to my labor playlist, because guess what? I am still pregnant. Yeah, anyway, okay, here we go. Monday, July 20th, here is our second Cancer new moon. We have the moon in Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn really late at night. Again, I don't know, maybe some of you, if you stay up this late and you feel these transits, let me know, because I'm like, okay, slept through that. Maybe I had a weird dream. I don't know. Okay, 11:32 a.m. We have the moon in Cancer conjoining the sun in Cancer, which is the new moon in Cancer at 28 degrees. And I made a whole video about that where I talk about where I talk about it being the second new moon in Cancer, where I talk about what that means in terms of the first one being an eclipse new moon in Cancer, where I look at the chart and talk about that. But basically we kind of have like another kind of new beginning, another restart in the Cancer part of our chart. But now we've been all the way through Cancer, and we've been through this really weird time of having eclipse season and all of these retrograde planets and all of the chaos kind of going on around us, and not feeling like we can shift things or move things or plan for things. And so now we get to integrate kind of whatever it was, the emotional experience of the past month, and kind of say, okay, we are not where we were a month ago, even though it looks like we haven't moved at all. So we've got this new moon to reflect those internal changes again. Okay, and then right after that, at noon, we have the moon opposing Saturn in Capricorn exactly. So, I mean, Saturn in Capricorn is opposing the new moon itself, but then we have the exact opposition with the moon. This can just feel a little bit crushing, like your body can't stand up to the status quo. Like you just can't hold the crappiness of the way things are, or the apathy of the structures of government, or it just reality feels too heavy. Can be that feeling, especially with our squishy Cancer moon and our heavy Saturn in Capricorn. But then the moon is going to enter Leo. So we've got a new moon, and now it's getting a boost of fire. And we've got the sun in the moon sign in Cancer and the moon in the sun sign in Leo. So we have mutual reception between the sun and the moon, which is very harmonious. And so we get a little bit of a bounce back. And so the moon in Leo, I find these people to be so fun. I mean, whatever, maybe they've got big voices, but I just find the moon in Leo, there's just a kind of optimism. I mean, obviously it matters where the sun is. And now that I'm thinking about it, my two closest moons in Leo that I'm thinking about when I'm saying this both have the sun in Aries where it's exalted. So maybe that's why they're so great. Yeah, but there's just a little bit of like, yeah, you're just more in your heart. You're more kind of like, just, yeah, what do we say about that? The charisma of Leo is just so warm. So the moon goes into Leo. And so we get a little bit of that instead of kind of a little bit of the like cloying, clingy, sad, afraid that it's weak, afraid that it's over emotional moon in Cancer. It's a warmer version of love, I think, in Leo. Maybe not quite as safe, but it's more invested in kind of you being who you are rather than who I need you to be for my emotional comfort. Okay, then we have in the afternoon, the sun opposes Saturn in Capricorn, so this is heavy. The sun representing our heart, our authentic self, really coming into challenging aspect with all the stuff that doesn't care about what we want. So you'll probably feel this opposition, you're probably feeling it, and this opposition, well, you'll feel it for a couple days. It'll be nice, it'll ease off when the sun goes into Leo on Tuesday. But the sun opposing Saturn can just feel like, oh God, there's too much work to do. I'm not strong enough. I can't stand up to this. I'm too squishy in Cancer. Hard. Yeah, and I think probably the news from today will be fairly bleak. We'll see, but all the news is bleak right now. Oh, here's the chart of the new moon. Yeah, so you see we've got the sun and the moon in Cancer at 28 degrees opposing Saturn at 28 degrees. So we've got that whole thing in aspect. yeah, I wanted to include this in here, but I'm not going to go into it because, as I have said multiple times already, I have a whole video about it, so you can check it out. Okay, then on Tuesday, we have the moon in Leo first thing in the morning, trining Chiron, retrograde, and Aries. So we get to pick up. Now we've got the moon in a fire sign, kind of kindling, starting to interact with Chiron and Aries. Then we have the moon squaring Uranus and Taurus, and that's really like, what is in my coffee? This is amazing, hopefully. It's a little bit of a shocker there, but now we've got these squares from fixed signs. So there's a little bit of, there can be a little bit more of a gridlock when you have squares from fixed signs rather than squares from mutable or cardinal signs. And so maybe that's like, whoa, I overate at breakfast. And so my moon is ready to kind of go out and go do stuff. And Uranus and Taurus is like, no, you need to sit on the couch for a little bit. Although that would be kind of weird. It's more like, I think you should ride your bike to work today. Then we have right after that, Mercury in Cancer squaring Chiron. Again, your voice is the medicine if you speak from the authentic self and from your heart. And, probably who needs to hear that is you. And then we have the moon in Leo, trine Mars and Aries. This is my favorite aspect of today because we've got this moon in a fire sign, trining Mars and Aries. Mars is getting, we're starting to get into a little bit of the danger zone with Mars entering the shadow of its retrograde. But we still have good inertia. We still got some good oomph. And so this is like, this is where we get our energy back from the new moon, when we get this fire. And that's why the phrase for today that I chose was kindle the embers, because it's kind of like, okay, we're rebuilding the fire. Like we've made it through the night of the new moon. And now like, let's get this fire going and let's cook some breakfast. Because we have, not an uncomplicated month ahead of us, but, let's see what we can do maybe a little bit, even if we don't accomplish anything, just to feel alive before we go into the Mars retrograde that happens in September, and we start getting the Mars square to the stuff in Capricorn later on. So there's a little bit of like, okay, let's stoke the fire. I don't know. Do you hear the adolescent quality of the new moon in all of this? I do. Okay. Then we have the moon sextile Venus and Gemini. So we get a little bit of like, okay, we've got a happier moon. We've got this playful Venus. Wouldn't it be a bad time to do something fun? No, I like Tuesday. There's all this fire. There's that Mercury in Cancer square Chiron. So maybe your voice is the wound. But that's really the only like sad part of Tuesday. Okay, Wednesday, we have the sun enter Leo in the middle of the night. And so this begins Leo season. Leo season, we come into the sign of the authentic self, of living from the heart, of the sun in rulership, kind of in this space of goals. We'll see. If I don't have a baby in the next 2 days, then I'm having a Leo instead of a Cancer, and I'm equally excited about both of them. Love both those signs. This will be funny. Yeah, we have the sun in Leo, and so there is this quality of things getting dried off. We've had a lot of Cancer. With Mercury being there for so long and the sun being there and all these eclipses and multiple lunations, it just feels like it's been wet, it's been sad, it's been cloistered, which I really enjoy. But there is a little bit more of like, okay, what are we really doing? And how do we, when we bring the sun back into the sign of the heart, right? How do we, this is not about what we need to feel safe. This is about what we need to feel like ourselves. So there can be this, like, you know, I think working through this Leo season, get to know yourself again and prioritize things that make you feel powerful and strong, not necessarily in a Mars way, not in exerting your will, because that's not really gonna work, and we've got some big lessons about that ahead, but just that really help you feel like you're living from the authentic place in yourself. And not in this like negative, like I'm gonna say no to that because it's not from the authentic place of myself. I think doing it in a fire way, in a more yes way. What can I say yes to? What can I do that feels really true to myself? And not like it's about pressure, not like it's about changing myself, right? This is a fixed sign. It's not, this is fixed fire. This is how do I sustain the like happy little engine that is me. Yeah, that's what we got for Leo season. Then we have Mercury in Cancer, sextiling Uranus and Taurus, so we might get some good ideas for that. And then we have the moon enter Virgo. So now we've got the moon out of the fire sign back into Virgo. So here we go. So here we have a little bit more analysis. The moon in Virgo is kind without being sticky. It's more about service. It's more like, what can we actually do here? What is efficient? That also means that the moon going into Virgo comes under the rulership of Mercury. So now we have mutual reception between Mercury and Virgo or Mercury and the moon, because Mercury rules Virgo, where the moon is, and the moon rules Cancer, where Mercury is. So we've got this fun little dance between our kind of intuitive, our instinctual knowing centers, and from the moon and Mercury. So this is going to be more powerful kind of intuition, and we're also both in feminine signs, so a little bit more of that new moon juice can kind of come through that. You can look at where Virgo and Cancer are in your charts and kind of the dynamic of what's going on there with the moon waxing in Virgo. It's a really good planner, and especially when we get into the waxing crescent, to be like, okay, what have we got? What are we trying to do? How do we do it? Great. Okay, because yeah, once it enters Virgo, now we're in a little bit more of a harmonious aspect with the Cancer Capricorn axis, which is so inflamed, and so we can do a little bit more negotiating, and the moon in Virgo is a pretty good negotiator in terms of figuring out what's the most efficient way forward given our goals, and Capricorn helps Virgo with establishing what the goals are, because Virgo can get bogged down in the details. So we're working on the new plan. We've got the moon in Virgo trining Uranus and Taurus. Okay, so we get a hit of inspiration, possibly. And then we have the moon sextile Mercury in Cancer. We're brought back down into our emotional bodies, what is important to us, how to integrate the knowledge that we learned from this past Mercury retrograde in Cancer. How are we holding that? How is that a part of the energy right now? How are we using that for self-care? I think, Cancer and Taurus get a lot of kind of props for self-care, but Virgo's pretty good at it too, and maybe Virgo looks a little bit more like, I don't know, diet plans, but more like, how do I take care of my body, and how do I take care of others so that we keep functioning? Less emotional. more efficient. Okay, and then we have the moon enter the waxing crescent phase, so we're getting a little bit more light. We're coming a little bit more into the light. We're functioning from a less intuitive place. We are starting to integrate what we are noticing in the world around us and the actions that we're taking. And then we have the moon square Venus in Gemini. This square, we've got two mutable signs. We've got our feminine bodies, the moon and Venus, both ruled by Mercury. It would be, I think, probably more playful if Mercury were in a more playful place, although Cancer can be playful in a childlike way. So just be soft this evening. Play some games, but like not, I don't know. I always think Venus and Gemini loves playing games, but like not like Pandemic or Catan or something with Mercury and Cancer. I don't know. Play some like jump rope or something. I don't know. And then we have Friday, which gets us into the moon going through kind of the middle and the end part of an earth sign, which means that we are dealing with the big boys in Capricorn, but we're dealing with them from Virgo. So we're in a trine aspect. We can integrate a lot of those challenges. There's a problem-solving quality about this. So the moon in Virgo opposes Neptune in Pisces, which can be a little bit overwhelming, but it happens at 4:22 a.m., so you're probably not going to notice it. Then the moon's going to trine Jupiter in Capricorn, which is the energy that we wake up on, depending on when you wake up. And so that's fairly constructive, it knows what it needs to get done, but can make it happen. And then we have the moon trine Pluto in Capricorn. That's going to make things seem bigger or smaller. So you can start the day with a little bit more gravitas. And then by the evening, we have the moon trine Saturn. So it's going to be moving into that trine with Saturn for most of the day. And that's just getting really practical, which the moon in Virgo is going to love to do anyway. And then as you're finishing up the dinner dishes, the moon will enter Libra, and we'll kind of, we've got a waxing crescent moon in Libra from the sun in Leo. So now we've got both of the moon and the sun in yang signs. So there's kind of a little bit more movement, less of the reflection of the moon in Virgo kind of laying the groundwork. And now this is going to be a really good time for creativity, because Leo and Libra are both very creative. Leo likes to produce from its heart, make the world more beautiful, and Libra is going to love to bring things into harmony. So you can kind of see both of those. And hopefully that will be our experience of the time there, of what we create, until, of course, moon gets towards the end of Libra and has to deal with all the squares to Capricorn. So we've got a bunch of cardinal stuff happening. The moon moved into a cardinal sign. It's going to, like I said, move into that sextile with the sun and Leo. They're both in yang signs, so more energy. We're in the waxing phase of the moon, more energy. And then we have the moon oppose Chiron in Aries. Okay, we're connecting with kind of wounds around selfhood. Again, I mean, the moon is going through these aspects, daily. I've got 3 or 5 of them, right? So, I think it's important to just kind of like ride the waves of them. And if you need a little bit of support, to check in. But right, this is about, when I do these videos, they are about just reflecting what's happening in the sky to help ground you. It's really not about like the creation of fear or trying to influence the narrative around. It's just, okay, how do I manage my expectations and bring myself kind of into harmony with what's going on? And of course, these aren't the aspects to your natal chart, which you might feel more strongly. This is just kind of the ethos. Okay. Then we have the moon square Mercury in Cancer. Okay, so now things get a little bit more interesting, right? The moon in Libra, which is much more relational, is kind of dragging out that introverted Mercury in Cancer and pushing it of like, okay, we need to create harmony, which means you need to risk something. But there's a lot at stake for both of us because this is how we're going to kind of create safety and beauty for ourselves. And then at 9:49, we have the moon oppose Mars. And so this is definitely kind of the biggest aspect in the one, I would say, well, the square to Mercury, and then the opposition to Mars, right? It's kind of highlighting that Mercury-Mars square that, that we had on July 8th and that we're gonna have again because of Mercury's retrograde. We're gonna have it again on Monday, the 27th. So the moon is kind of feeling its way into that. And the moon in Libra really doesn't like to rock the boat. So it's kind of getting into tippy territory here. So it's going to be, you know, maybe touch that tripwire and then just be like, oh, sorry, and do its kind of Libra diplomacy, smooth things out little piece. And so it can feel like you are getting kind of in warmer, more heated territory. But the moon will pass through that fairly quickly. So hopefully you don't set any fires. Okay, Sunday is definitely challenging. And I was thinking about this. I feel like the past few Sundays, the way it works out, and this would make sense, is that we've often got the moon in kind of a cardinal sign or something. And I feel like I'm always talking about the Sunday scaries because the moon's always making an aspect to Pluto on Sunday. And this Sunday is no different. So here we are. Got the moon in Libra trining Venus and Gemini. That's nice. That's social. Too bad it happens at 4:44 a.m. Unless you're having coffee with somebody who lives in England over Skype, which that would be fun. Yeah, you probably won't be up, but maybe you'll wake up to that, but probably the moon square Jupiter in Capricorn. So again, the way that we would like things to be, the way it would feel harmonious for things to be, getting kind of tangled with Jupiter and Capricorn, making the best of the way things are. And then kind of having a heavier morning with the moon squaring Pluto in Capricorn for the morning and feeling overwhelmed, possibly. Or just feeling like it's going to rise above it all. Pluto can also make things seem like less of a big deal. And the moon in Libra does not have tremendous tolerance for discomfort, right? It wants things to be okay. And so that square to Pluto, we may just prefer to eat our scones and coffee with our friends from across the pond and not think about what's going on. Okay, then we have Mercury clearing its retrograde shadow. So you're not going to feel this in the moment, but it's just important to know that it's happening. Okay, we are on to new Mercury territory. And this sometimes affects people that have Venus and big Venus, Virgo and Gemini placements more than others. So sometimes if you're sensitized to it, you can feel it more. And then we have the moon squares Saturn in Libra in the evening. And so that's probably going to be, I don't know, just how we all feel on Sunday nights, about to head into the week. It's not, we are just having to negotiate between the Libran kind of comfort of just being in spaces with people that we feel comfortable around, and then Monday having to go in and negotiate the world again. And then right as it's getting dark up here, the moon will enter Scorpio. And just a couple hours later, it squares the sun. And so that is kind of the wrap up of our first quarter. Like I said, there's not, the biggest things that happen over the next week happened today and tomorrow, with our Cancer new moon opposing Saturn, and the sun opposing Saturn, and the sun going into Leo. They're all kind of the big shifts. And then, then we just are kind of along for the ride for the rest of the week. I did include Monday, just so that we can kind of be aware, because there are some big things that happen on Monday. A week from today is kind of a pivot for some developments. So, right, we had the moon go into Scorpio. Scorpio squares Leo. So we've got this, the moon is going to square the sun in Leo, and that brings us into the first quarter of the moon, which is the entrance into the second quarter of the lunar month. So we've got the moon at its quarter. Sorry, I'm double Virgo over here, and sometimes Mercury in Cancer messes with my words. Okay, and then we've got Jupiter in Capricorn sextiling Neptune in Pisces. This is a dynamic that's kind of around for a lot of 2020, but because 2020 has such big other challenging outer planet dynamics within Capricorn, I don't think we're noticing it too much. We might see it in what happens on the global stage financially. There can be some delusional stuff with that, but not huge, and it's just a sextile. So then we have Venus in Gemini squaring Neptune in Pisces. So this is, remember, we had Venus in Gemini in this square with Neptune for the first 3 weeks or so of her retrograde, of really kind of really needing to be careful about our delusions, about our relationships and our values, and things not being as they seem, and Neptune really contributing to that. So now Venus is contending with that square again, with the shadow of that. So it's just really important that we are not getting kind of caught up in some kind of Piscean rose-colored glasses. I imagine that we're not after the Venus retrograde in Gemini, and we're actually getting really close to Venus also leaving the shadow of her retrograde, which happens on Tuesday the 28th, so the next day. And so she's getting to kind of revisit what were some of maybe the delusions or the idealizations of that square with Neptune. And then we get our Mercury in Cancer square Mars and Aries aspect perfected again. So, right, so we had this back on July 8th. Emotional volatility of these two planets in a square aspect in cardinal signs, with Mercury really defensive in Cancer and Mars in Aries pretty with lots of gusto, ready to move forward and ready to push through, and doesn't really care how Mercury feels about it, but Mercury's gonna make a big stink and maybe be, gonna challenge Mars's just march forward. So I would just be careful around how you are communicating on Monday, and really kind of, the days around Monday as this square is getting aggravated. Just be careful about that. I know kind of around July 8th, I was seeing kind of just people upset, not sure how to communicate with their partners, not sure how to communicate their emotional needs, and also projecting their emotional needs onto their partners. Or onto the people around them, which is something that Mercury in Cancer can do. And then, so we have whenever the moon goes through a fixed sign, it's going to aspect Uranus. We have the moon opposing Uranus in Taurus. So again, this can be a big emotional blowout, which it's just kind of unfortunate that it happens, 20 minutes after the Mercury in Cancer square Mars in Aries. So this is an emotionally volatile day. It's confusing with the Neptune stuff. We may not be seeing things quite as clearly, but I think, we've got the Sun Moon square, which is already volatile. There's just, this day strikes sparks if that needs to happen. And, the moon is in Scorpio, where it is in its fall, opposing Uranus, which is in the sign of the moon's exaltation. So it's just really hard for the moon to cope in Scorpio. It's going to have bigger reactions. It's going to respond more aggressively, being ruled by Mars and Aries. So I would just know that this is coming. And there could be some kind of shockers, and you might shock yourself in the ways that you react and the ways that you respond to people on Monday. So hopefully I will be back here in a week, having had my child. And but if I'm not, I might take a week off, but we'll see. I'll be back. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. You can check out my website on my Instagram, Starhearth Astrology. If you type it in, you guys are tech savvy, you can find that stuff. Let me know if there's anything unanswered, if you have more questions, if you disagree, whatever. I'm all good. Okay, be well, have a great week, and I will catch you next time.